Well, tell us, you lived at Findhorn.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. And when and what drew you here? And how is it sort of unwrapped throughout your life's journey?
Yeah, um, what happened is how I got drawn to Findhorn was I, I've kind of been a mystic since I was little. Rue calls me a mystic jock because I kind of blend mysticism. Um, but but I got into sports when I got in high school and college. I was totally into sports. I was into a bunch of different sports and partying and all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of put the other stuff aside. And then one day when I was actually had come for a rugby alumni match, I was walking across this area and suddenly this being appeared in front of me. It was this light being. It didn't say a word. It just was radiating. And it started this kind of argument within me. I was kind of going, no, 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 no. And then finally I said yes. And this wave of peace came over me that literally lasted for a couple days. And after that, it was like I had to find everything spiritual, meditative, everything. So I found a place where I could learn meditation more deeply. And you could take this class, a weekend class. And if you took it once, you could repeat it for free every time. So I took it 12 times during the year. And then they would have these gatherings of people who had taken the class on the Wednesday evening. And it would be a social gathering and everything and meditate together. So I was at one of those and I was watching this guy who's kind of moving, working the crowd. He looked kind of like a California hippie, had gray hair pulled in a ponytail behind his back. And he suddenly came up to me and he said, "You're Tim Haas, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I've got this book for you." And it was The Magic of Findhorn. And so I read it that night and I was like, oh, I got to go to this place and everything. And I tried to give the book back and it turned out nobody had ever heard of the guy. He came literally out of nowhere and then disappeared. And everybody thought he was my friend because I'd been talking to him. But I did read the book and so I wrote to Findhorn and said, I'd really like to come there. So they sent me somebody's all filled out application from like Texas. And so I sent it back and said, you sent me somebody's filled out. That happened 4 times, literally 4 times. Application from New York and from 2 other states, where it was an all filled out application. They sent it to me. But then there was other material in there. So I thought, okay, its timing isn't right. So I put everything aside. And then a couple, 2-3 months later, I was again at a rugby alumni match at the college I went to. And I got in my meditation, the time is open for you and to go in November. And this was like in August. And so I looked through all my material and there was an Essence of Findhorn program that was starting in November. And it said, write something about yourself. So I wrote this 10-page, thing about myself and sent it off. And the woman who was in charge of the Essence program got my letter and she turned to her roommate who was Mary Ingalls and said, I think this person should come for orientation rather than Essence. And if he ever comes to Findhorn, I'm going to fall in love with him. And that was Rue.
Wow.
So that's what drew me to Findhorn. And then the rest is kind of history, so to speak. We met and married there and had our first child. And then I spent 4 years there. So I came in 1977 and we left in 1981.
Lovely. Wow. What a story, Tim. I mean, yes. So tell me, you're writing a book. Would you like to talk a little bit about that? Because I think it also includes what our meditation was about and how you've come from what you learned here and how does that inform this piece of work you're doing now?
Yeah, one of the most important things that I learned at Findhorn was I learned a bit before I got there, about how everything is alive. Everything is sentient. It may not have the consciousness that we do, but it is sentient. And so that was one of the major things that I focused on. And I was, when we went back to Wisconsin, I was a psychologist for an outpatient psychiatric unit for 23 years. Dealt with SWAT teams and suicides and all that. And then our daughters asked us to move to Colorado. And so we couldn't turn that down. So we moved to Colorado and I decided to do complete 180. And so I got a job in a kind of organic grocery store which had 36 stores in the area, but now it has like 150 or whatever. And they put me in the dairy department because I was from Wisconsin, so they figured I was a cheesehead. But I thought, if I'm going to do this and work in this dairy department, I'm going to apply what David taught me. And so I decided, since everything is a sentient, has a consciousness or sentience, and people go on pilgrimages, why couldn't I set up a pilgrimage for the dairy product? And so when the dairy product would come in, I would bless it and honor it, and I would use touch of love. The variation that we used in the touch of love that we just did, that was more of a more advanced form where you do it as a mist. But the normal way of doing touch of love is you get in touch with something you really deeply love, you build it up, and then you allow it to flow down into your hands. And so your hands are these implements of love, so to speak. So then I would pick up things that I was, unpacking them or stocking them, and I would be conveying that love into each of those products. And you can also use touch of love like if you're typing, sending love into a letter that you're writing, whatever you're doing. But I would do that, and then what happened is, about 2 months into the process of having worked there, this was during the economic downturn, 2008, 2009, on the national level or global level. Suddenly the corporate people showed up and they said, "We want to know what's going on here." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, this department in this store is the only department in all 36 stores, including this store, that's showing a profit. We want to know what's going on." And I was like, "Oh, I have no idea," because I didn't want it to be about money. I wanted it to be about, the consciousness we were working with. And so they finally put it up to good facing and customer service or whatever, and then left. But I continued to work with that. So that was the first kind of application of what I'd learned at Findhorn, and then accelerating and kind of putting it on steroids with what I, with working with David, into a simple process that you can use anywhere. You can use it in your home. And that's what so when I'm writing a book about the home, I'm writing about doing that, working with the touch of love, but also understanding that our artifacts, the things that are built by humans, if they're built with love, then they understand who they are. But if they're not built with love, what happens is, like, say this is as a metal trunk, so to speak, and then I will say a wood base, and then say this is made out of like animal skin or something. If this doesn't have, if it's machine made and it's not made with love, what happens is this metal aspect goes back to its mineral consciousness. The wood base goes back to its treeness, and the animal aspect goes back to its animal background. It doesn't understand itself as a lamp. But if we work with it and honor it and use, touch of love and grail space, which is some of the exercises we use, where you call upon it to come forward with its sacredness, it responds. And so it starts to understand itself, and it starts to brighten up, and it becomes all it can be, in a sense. So you can do that with everything in your home. You can start to activate your home so it becomes like a sacred space. And we've had a tendency in the past, one of David's inner colleagues said, we kind of treat our artifacts, our objects, like slaves. Just like this, the old treatment of slaves was they didn't really exist. They were just objects. And so we may treat things in sense of being a good slaveholder. We honor it or whatever, but we really need to understand that it is equal to us in consciousness. Not consciousness, but it's equal to us in sacredness. It has as much sacredness as we do. And we need to foster all of that sacredness and get all of this working together and expressing. So then our home becomes, like I said, this sacred space, and it becomes alive. And it also can become a place of tremendous calm and like a sanctuary. The whole home can become like a sanctuary. Now think about how much time we spend in our homes, particularly now with COVID, and our tendency to say, oh, we got to get out into nature to experience our spirituality. Our spirituality is right here as well, within our home. We have a being that overlights our home, what we call the angel of the home, or what's called the genus loci, the intelligence of the location. And that helps us to overlight this space. And so, you have when something's built, there's a kind of initial angelic force that takes over, kind of almost elemental. Then as people move in and start to bring in everything, then this new angel comes, steps in and starts to work with all this, and it becomes its focus. So a simple way to touch into the angel of your home is to imagine you're walking through an amazing art gallery and you're appreciating all the art in the art gallery. And remember, the angel of your home is like the artist that helped create this home. And so when you start to notice its work, you start to listen in and get closer. And then you can say, appreciate what you've done with the place, and would you work with me on improving it? And another way of improving it is working what we call the underbodies. David calls me the Underbody Whisperer because I so like this whole process. But and the underbodies are very simply, they're kind of not quite manifest. They're almost like an etheric consciousness, and they're very simple beings. And their job is to anchor qualities into the environment. So let's say you've been depressed for a month. They're going to anchor that into your walls, into your furniture, into everything. And that stays in there. But you can work with them and say, would you release that? And now I'd like to anchor love and joy. And so you can anchor love and joy into your environment or choose certain things. It's usually very simple, and then you can get more complex as you move on. But there's also an underbody that kind of, they individuate into a space, but then there's also an underbody that like overlights the whole planet. It's like a drum skin. So you can work with them at a distance. So one of the things that I started doing in 2009, started working with Vance, who used to be at Findhorn. And he runs the Wild Foundation. And we met after I moved to Colorado, because that's where Wild is based. And he said, could you help us with something? And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, we're going to do this gathering in Mexico in the fall of 2009. And the swine flu is running rampant. The economic downturn is big time. And the drug lords are leaving bodies everywhere. And I said, well, and so we don't have the sign up. So we thought, that we'd like. And I said, yeah, well, I can probably help with this. And David's inner colleagues had asked us to start working with these beings he calls the underbodies. And so what I did is Vance would bring me pictures of the expo location in Merida, Mexico. And I started working with the space with the underbodies and the overlighting being of the space, and would anchor love and joy into the place. And so we did that for months, literally. I usually do, right now I do 2 hours a day of subtle activism and working with different projects around the world for Wild, plus Lorien things and other things going on. But anyway, so we got down there, and it was the first day of the conference, right? The Congress. We now had between 1,500 and 2,000 people coming from 65 countries.
Ooh, wow.
President Calderon of Mexico was scheduled to speak the first night. Now, at that time, he's the most targeted leader in the world because of the drug lords. So he brings along 3,000 of his friends, which were basically troops. So you had tanks, you had machine gun nests, you had snipers, you had a checkpoint coming into the place with guys with machine guns and metal detectors, and a checkpoint between the exhibit area and the speaker area that ran all day long. So to start the day, we literally had over 1,000, but probably 1,500 people lined up around the building, delayed by 2 hours getting into this place because of the checkpoint. And Vance was an hour late getting there because of the roadblocks. So we thought, oh my God, we're dead in the water, right? So Vance goes out to check on all the people, and they're all happy. They're all, even though they're probably jet lagged from wherever, they're all happy. The underbodies did their job, and they stayed happy all week. They're happy, they're joyful all week. And Jane Goodall, who's busier than most presidents, she was scheduled as well the first day. She liked the energy so much that she changed her schedule and stayed for the whole week. And so here's an application of this in a much larger context that works. And we also did it, later on we applied it to the Elephant Project in Mali, which is considered by the UN to be the most dangerous assignment for the UN troops in the world. And we worked with, I do behind the scenes subtle support, in other words, working with underbodies in the whole, millions of underbodies in the whole space. And then also we have a counter poaching unit that came on board at the same time. So between 2012 and 2016, 2012, the Al-Qaeda almost took over the Mali. And but they're stopped right by the Capitol. Between 2012 and 2016, we lost 150 elephants, close to 150 out of a herd of 500. Between January of 2017, when we set up the counter poaching unit and I started working with it, we've lost 3 elephants until now. And so
Wow.
it shows you can apply this stuff, most dangerous situation in the planet and international congresses. So think what you can do with it when you're home. You can apply it to work with underbodies in terms of anchoring. You can choose a quality for each room. I had a woman who couldn't sleep. She was in a Madison workshop I taught in Madison. She had trouble sleeping at night. She worked with the underbodies anchoring sleep. Now she hits a pillow and she's gone. So there's amazing amount of things done. Yeah, sorry.
So working with the underbody, just tell us a little bit about how would say I work with the underbody. Now I want to remind you of a time that we had together actually, where when you and Rue were living at Cologne, and then I came as part of the Cologne team over there and started living there. And one of our assignments was to clean the house and instill consciousness and love into, the stairs, the carpet, the furniture, everything. And, and the language of the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s was raising the vibration. That's what we were doing in that particular dwelling. Right. And is that a connection to what you're doing today? Yeah, I mean, connecting with the underbodies is very, very easy. Well, I mean, I consider it easy. And underbodies are like subtle work 101. It's very basic and simple to do. So if you just imagine yourself, just imagine closing your eyes. Go ahead, close your eyes. Okay. Now do the exercise that we did in the opening meditation where you get in touch with something that you deeply love. And build that up, stronger and stronger, until you can no longer contain it. And then allow that love to flow down through your arms, through your hands, into a circle in front of you. You're creating a circle in front of you, or it could be a sphere, of hospitality and love. And then into that circle, you invite the underbodies of your place. And they take on the form of whatever is appropriate for you. To me, they look like little schmooze from Little Abner. To other people, it look like little R2D2s or, a cloud of little things. It's whatever works for you. And then you decide what you want to anchor. So in this case, let's say it's joy. So now you get in touch in your heart center once again with the quality of joy. Feeling it build stronger and stronger. And then you are actually a big underbody yourself. And they're very primitive, so you're going to show them what you want now. And once you've built up this joy and want stronger and stronger, then you move to something in the room and you flow your joy into that object. So you're demonstrating and you're looking over at them saying, this is what we're doing. You're being a big underbody. But it's much easier having literally thousands of underbodies that can help you. If you had to do it yourself, it'd take forever. So then you come back to your place where you were, reconnect with that sense of joy, building stronger and stronger, until once again you can no longer contain it. And then you allow it to flow down to the underbodies. And they take in that energy. For me, they look, like I said, they look like little schmooze, like little bowling pin people. And they change color for me in terms like with joy, they change to like a bright yellow once they've taken in the energy. But for each person, it's different. And then you just ask them to go and distribute that energy throughout the house, every square inch. And they know what they're doing. They've been doing it their whole lives, however long that is. And they go out and they distribute that energy and they anchor it into every square inch. Okay? So you can open your eyes again. So that's a simple process. The only other thing is
that's the way we did it first and early on, over and repeated it over and over again. But then what David and her colleague said is you want to start working with, like in the case of your home, you would work with the angel of the home and get in touch with that, ask it to open up those receptor sites throughout the home. And so you're getting a coordinated effort, and that enhances it and makes it much stronger. And if you're doing, like, say, Mali, I don't know Deva's in Mali, right? But Susan, who is running the project there, she has a shamanic background. She was really strongly connected to the Deva, the Niger River. So I was able to piggyback through her to connect into the Deva, the Niger River, and then work with that. And then ultimately the Deva that was overlighting the land. But in the case of, you're saying you're going to want to work with, say you wanted to work with Baghdad, right? In some way. You don't know Baghdad, but there's the angel of Findhorn that you can work with. For me, it would be the angel of Boulder. I know the angel of Boulder. So I connect in with that. And this is an old, it's kind of an old angels or an old subtle network, you know, they all know each other. And so by connecting to this, I asked the angel of Boulder to introduce me to the angel of Baghdad. And then I can start to work with it. Whatever. Anyways, that's just the basic stuff of how to work with underbodies.
Well, I don't know how basic that was, Timothy, but yeah, but you know, I mean, yes. So everything has consciousness and animation about it, and so this enlivens it. So our spaces become sacred.
Right. And that's what happened in the sanctuary there. It's because of the meditation over and over again. That energy is anchored stronger and stronger into that space, and until it's permeated everything. And
like Findhorn, like the Findhorn, like Park, Clooney, Iona, all of that is anchored with the angel of Findhorn and the expression there. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you think Findhorn's relevance in the world today is, and maybe how to work with that in this context that you've brought forward?
Well, I think, you know, Findhorn is a, excuse me. Findhorn is a demonstration center. It shows us what's capable of happening. You know, by understanding and working with, in cooperation and communion with the world around us, and also working with love. You know, the three things that Michael was talking about yesterday. You know, it's a powerful demonstration center, and we can replicate that in our own spaces. And that's what I'm doing when I'm doing with the work that I'm doing. I'm replicating that, you know, in the work with our garden. Rue does the work. So I just need some water here. So Rue does a lot of the work with coordinating the gardeners and stuff in our garden, but then there's also the inside, and that's a garden too. You know, we have a tendency to think, oh, it's just the gardens that are the most important, but gardens are important, but also there's the garden within the buildings. And that was a really important, prominent thing early on. I remember working with Roy and Muriel one time. We were cleaning the sanctuary, and they said, we have to clean this with love. We have to clean every little corner. And so they're really consciously putting their love in action, but they're also raising the vibration. So if I'm teaching someone how to work with their home, one of the first things they have to do is make sure it's clean, you know, and then from there, then we can start to work with, you know, the Grail space and the underbodies and all the other things that can go into that. But I think, you know, Findhorn right now is still an incredible, relevant message to the world, a demonstration center of what can be done. You know, this was, and in the early days you had the garden, and then the Davis couldn't keep that up, obviously, because it was, you know, it was like early showing what can be done, but you can't just go on forever like that. And so, but it's continued, but not quite as the level it had in the early days.
You mean like the 40-pound cabbages?
The 40-pound cabbages
and that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And we have the same thing, the work that we do with you know, subtle activism around the world with wild. We're having incredible successes, you know, one after another. And I think part of it's because we're demonstrating what can be done when applying these processes. And so now with Findhorn, Findhorn's always had two aspects to it. It has a community aspect and kind of a, would call it a mystical, although the term mystical has a tendency towards oneness. And we have a more emphasis on wholeness and sovereignty. I mean, because you want to keep the diversity. If I'm working with with something, I want to honor its diversity and honor all the aspects of it, rather than just clumping into one big oneness. The sacredness is there for everything, and that's present. But we really need to be aware of the diversity, and that's what creates the synthesis and brings everything together. So, like if I'm doing like Grail space, say with this lamp, right, and I'm getting in touch with my sacredness and calling out my note, and then I call upon it to respond with its note, then what happens is we come together like that, and God explodes in the boundaries. There's a new relationship that is established. And that's where, that's what Findhorn, one of the things Findhorn was teaching is, if you start to, work in the way that was done and is still done at Findhorn, then you start to get new relationships, new expressions, new permutation, things that break off of that, and new aliveness that comes out of that. And so I think, I'm not sure how Findhorn will express that in the future, but it still is. It's still a important element of demonstration, and people like to go there and feel that experience. But now also it can be taught. We used to think, I like to go and do face-to-face workshops, because I think that's, for me, it's more, I feel like I'm more powerful and more can, have an engagement with someone. But what I found is actually when I'm doing a Zoom session or whatever, I can connect my energy and my field, and then virtually commune with another field, and it becomes really powerful. It can be almost more powerful sometimes than face to face. So there's incredible opportunities for Findhorn to demonstrate, that wholeness that can be captured and brought forth online, through Zoom and different things like that.
So Timothy, I really like the expression "God exploded in the boundary" when you were demonstrating how you reached.
Colleague said that, yeah.
yeah. Say a little bit more, and this will be our last sort of comments and inspiration. So go for it. I don't know if
there's a whole lot more to say about that. It's just that, it's like let's say, like when you and Joy got together to do the game, right? And you start out with Joy, and then you got to get involved, and then the two of you start to engage and interact, and then more and more creative ideas start to bubble up from the engagement between the two of you. That's the explosion. That's that.
And the game data and the intelligence that was there.
Yeah,
began
but it's also
to grow.
Exploding. And then what you did is then you attract the game data. Okay, for the angel. An angel has a tendency to focus around human activities. A deva is more around nature activities. So I'll often call something like, I would say the game is probably more of an angel rather than a deva. There's some slight difference in the vibration, but that explodes that. But you can also do that, like I said, with objects. You can do that with all kinds of different things where you can enhance that that creative explosion, that uniqueness and that beauty. When I work with the underbodies, I started out just working with love and joy, and now I've moved to working with beauty, because it's more of a complex process, because they're very simple, so I had to gradually evolve them along. And so now when I'm working with beauty, it's not like beauty of, oh, what a beautiful painting or a beautiful woman or whatever. It's the beauty of, like, when you look through a mother's eyes. If you're a mother spider and you're looking at spiders, they're beautiful. Yeah. And so that's what I want to capture in when I'm working with beauty. And that's how, well, I don't like, there'll be a long discussion to go into something else, but anyways.
Well, you might touch on it. Go ahead.
Well, years ago, we did a workshop with David. It was about world work. And we all got there. It was going to be a week-long workshop. And 2 days into the workshop, David's colleagues hijacked the workshop and said, world work is all well and good, but the true world work is having a Gaian consciousness. So they spent the next 3 days teaching us what a Gaian consciousness was about. And then we initiated each other at the end. So I initiated Julie, David's wife, and she initiated me into this Gaian consciousness. And people often ask, well, what's a Gaian consciousness? The only way I can describe it is like, if you became a mother, right?
Mm.
Okay, you'd still be Kathy. But there's a change in the sense of responsibility and how you view the world.
Mm-hmm.
You have that sense of, I need to take care of this. I need to embody this. I need to understand this. And so it's the same when you look, the Gaian consciousness is looking through Gaia's eyes and understanding. It's like looking through a mother's eyes or a father's eyes. It's taking that extra responsibility and embracing and understanding the beauty of the world around you and taking responsibility for it. That's the simplest way I can explain
Thank you, Timothy.
it.
No, that was like, wow. Okay. Yeah. We'll have to all probably listen to that one again, just to, incorporate some of the inspiration and directions and pointers you gave. Many pointers in there, actually, for deepening a spiritual relationship with the substance of the world that is around us and that we are of. So thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you everyone for joining us for this this time with Timothy. And we wish you the best as you go about your day or evening, wherever you are.